I never thought a single missed pass could rewrite my whole life. It was the final play of the state championship, a perfect Sunday afternoon in a small Midwestern town that still smells like freshly cut grass and hot dog smoke. I was the quarterback for the Ridgeview High Tigers, a kid everyone in town knew, a kid everyone expected to be the next college star. The stadium was a sea of orange and navy, the band was screaming the fight song, and the scoreboard read 2-1 with 2 seconds left. The whole town was holding its breath. My dad, a mechanic with grease-stained hands, was sitting in the front row, his fingers crossed like a kid. The ball snapped, my eyes locked on the receiver, a skinny sophomore named Miguel, who had just joined the varsity team that season. I saw his cleats dig into the turf, his helmet flashing a little sunburst of sweat. I launched the ball with all the power I could muster, expecting a perfect spiral. Time seemed to freeze for a heartbeat. Then the ball hit a gust of wind, just the right, or wrong, amount, and it slipped off Miguel's glove, spiraling into the open end zone like a stray comet. The stadium fell silent. The referee's whistle cut through the hush. The other team's fans erupted. I remember the sting of 1,000 eyes on me, the way my dad's clenched jaw loosened just enough to let a sigh out. We had lost. That loss was the catalyst for a spiral that, at the time, felt like a simple downward curve but would end up a freefall. I was 17, my future a neatly packed playbook, and I didn't know how to handle the taste of failure. I started drinking more, pushing my limits in the gym, trying to beat that feeling with louder music and louder friends. I fell in with a crowd that thought respect was measured in the number of people you could scare off the field. College offers evaporated, my scholarship fell through when I missed the SAT deadline, and my dad's garage started taking extra shifts to keep the lights on. I didn't care about any of that. My life turned into a series of reckless nights, fights, and small crimes, stealing spare parts from the mechanic shop to sell to a friend who fixed cheap cars for cash. It wasn't long before a night in June turned into a police raid. I was caught with a toolbox full of stolen parts, a busted phone, and a bruised ego. The courtroom was a sterile room with fluorescent lights humming above us like a bee-like reminder that no one could escape the sting of consequence. My dad was there, his eyes a mix of disappointment and a love he could barely articulate. The judge sentenced me to 18 months in a state facility for juvenile offenders, a place that smelled like disinfectant and stale hope. I walked into that cell with a broken record of excuses playing in my head. The first weeks were a mix of isolation and a heavy weight of guilt that clung to my skin like sweat on a hot day. I was surrounded by kids who had also missed their passes, metaphorically and literally. There was Jamal, who'd been in a gang for 10 years before a shooting took his older brother. There was Lila, a teen mother who'd been arrested for a shoplifting incident that was really a desperate act to get diapers. One evening, after a grueling day of forced community work, I found myself in the facility's small multipurpose room. A social worker named Ms. Alvarez set up a battered acoustic guitar and asked, "Who wants to play?" I laughed, a nervous, short sound, and said, "I don't know how." She looked at me with a softness that seemed out of place in the concrete halls. "Give it a try. It's not about being good, it's about being honest." I hesitated, then took the guitar. My fingers fumbled over the strings, making a series of dissonant squeaks. Ms. Alvarez gently guided my hands, showing me a simple chord. I sang a lyric that I'd written years before, tucked away in a notebook under a pile of high school cheat sheets. I'm a broken boy, looking for a line to cross, but I'm still a man who wants to get back to the light. Something clicked. The music didn't erase my past, but it offered a different language for my guilt. Over the months, the guitar became my secret, my private sanctuary. I started a small music program for the other kids, teaching them basic chords, writing verses about the life we'd all been forced into. The day I got my parole, I walked out of the facility with a battered suitcase, a thin blanket, a handful of cash, and a guitar strapped to my back. My dad was there, his hands shaking as he handed me a key to a small one-bedroom apartment above his garage. "You've got a chance to get back on that field, but in a different way," he said, his voice cracking. I thought about going back to football, but my knees ached with old injuries, and my reputation in the town had been scarred more deeply than my bruised ribs. I needed a different field. I moved back to Ridgefield, the same town that had cheered for my high school victories, and started looking for a job. The first door I knocked on was a local community center, the Ridgefield Haven. The director, a middle-aged woman named Carla, was skeptical when I handed her my resume, which listed former athlete and mechanical skills alongside a small entry for volunteer guitar tutor, prison. She said, "We're not looking for trouble, kid." I didn't argue, I just said, "I'm not looking to be the trouble. I'm looking to bring music to the kids who need a voice." To my surprise, she gave me a trial shift, 5 hours a week, after school, teaching guitar to a group of 12 kids ranging from 8 to 15. The first session was awkward, the kids stared at me as if I were a stray dog. I set my guitar down, looked them in the eyes, and said, "I messed up a lot. I know how it feels to be judged before you get a chance to prove yourself. If you let me, I'll give you a song you can call yours." The silence cracked. A shy kid named Eli, a skinny boy with a broken arm and a cast, lifted his hand and said, "Teach me the chords for Stand By Me." We started with that simple song. The first few chords were shaky, the notes missed, but the room filled with a different kind of roar, the sound of strings vibrating, of a group of kids humming together. It was the same feeling I'd felt on the field, but gentler, more inclusive. Weeks turned into months. I added a small performance night each quarter, inviting parents, teachers, and the occasional skeptical neighbor. I saw the town's eyes shift, no longer only focused on my past mistakes, but on the way my kids could hold a tune, how the community could gather around a modest stage and listen. The real turning point came when the high school football team, now a new batch of seniors, approached the community center for a charity event. The team was raising money for a new set of helmets after the old ones were deemed unsafe. The quarterback, a tall, earnest kid named Tyler, asked if we could have a live band for the halftime show. I laughed, a genuine belly laugh. "I'm not a band, but I can get a few guitars." He smiled, "We'll need more than just guitars, maybe a drum, some singers." We went to the local church, the town's small thrift shop, even a neighbor's garage, and asked for instruments. In 2 weeks, we had a full makeshift band, 3 guitars, a second-hand drum set, a keyboard salvaged from a church's storage, and a choir of kids from the community center. On the day of the charity game, the stands were packed, the sun blazed, and the field looked like a green ocean. As the teams lined up, the crowd quieted for the halftime performance. I stood backstage, guitar in hand, heart racing like a kid on a roller coaster. When the first chord struck, I saw my dad in the front row, his eyes wet. I saw Miguel, now a senior defensive back, smiling as he clapped. I saw the kids from the center beaming, their faces lit with a joy that made the cheap spotlights seem like stage lights. We played 3 songs, Stand By Me, You'll Be Back, and a custom song we'd written together called Ridgefield Rise. The final chorus had the entire stadium singing, a chorus that echoed across the fields and into the streets. The crowd's energy lifted a heavy weight that had sat on my shoulders for years. After the game, the principal approached me, shaking my hand. "We're offering you a full-time position as the music coordinator for the district," he said, "and a chance to start a mentorship program for at-risk youth, partnering with the community center." I felt a knot loosen. It was as if the missed pass in my senior year had finally found its opposite, a perfect pass. The next morning, I drove to the garage where my dad worked, still covered in the smell of oil and diesel. He looked up as I entered, wiping his hands on a rag. "Morning, Coach," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "Morning, Dad," I replied, pulling my guitar from the case. He raised an eyebrow. "What's that for?" I placed the guitar on the workbench, a symbolic bridge between the two halves of my life. "I'm going to start a program at the high school, a place where kids can come after practice, learn music, find an outlet. It's the new field I'm playing on." His eyes filled with a pride I hadn't seen in a long time. He nodded. "You always had a good heart under that helmet. Good to see it finally getting a chance to shine." That summer, the mentorship program took off. I paired kids who were struggling in class with older students who could teach them guitar basics. I invited former inmates to talk about their experiences, turning the community center into a hub for honest stories. I also started a weekly Friday jam at the local diner, where anyone could walk in, grab an instrument, and play a song. The ripple effect was subtle but powerful. The town that once whispered about my mistake began to speak about how many lives were changing because a former football star turned his redemption into a song. The high school football team, inspired by the music program, started a tradition of playing a pregame acoustic set, a ritual that reminded them that a field is more than a patch of grass, it's a place for community. Looking back, I realized that the missed pass wasn't a failure, it was a pause that forced me to listen to a different kind of crowd. The crowd of my teammates, my family, my town, they were all there, just waiting for a new beat to sink. I still carry that guitar with me, not as a symbol of my past, but as a reminder that redemption isn't a single act, it's a series of chords, strummed over time, sometimes offbeat, sometimes perfect, but always moving forward. If you ever find yourself thinking that a single mistake defines you, remember the power of a missed pass. It may just be the start of a different kind of game, a game where the field stretches beyond the stadium, into the hearts of those willing to listen to a new song. And as for me? I'm still learning to play, still teaching, still missing a few chords here and there. But I'm also hearing the applause of a town that decided to give a second chance, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. That applause? It's the sweetest sound I've ever heard.